Are we rolling? Yep. What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be doing part 5 of What If I Was in, part 6 actually of What If I Was in Naruto. We're going to be covering the Boruto, not the Boruto arc, the Back in Time arc, because it will change a lot because of reasons. So we see the next part is also I will be covering the Mitsuki recover mission, just saying. I actually won't be covering that, I'll leave that. It's just going to be a long version of the Back in Time arc. So we see that Naruto, Christian, and Sasuke and Sai are all in the Hokage office talking about Urashiki and how they can get him, and everyone's confused, like, why is all these Ototsukis going after the tail beast? Like, we get it, Kaguya had all of them, but we get it. But, like, seriously, they keep on attacking our village, and we don't really want them to attack any other village, so I guess that's the reason why. And right when Naruto says that, something explodes in the Leaf Village. Immediately, Naruto says, "Watch out!" And it comes straight for the Hokage Tower, but it misses. Perfectly it misses. Then he says, "Let's go." Then he says, "Everyone combined into the 10 tails." And this time, he asks if they want to really do this permanently. And they say, yes. And they say yes. And then he says, "Wait a minute, I just thought of something else. Why don't you all just stay there and I can use the 10 tails power, because I'm pretty sure Hagoromo did that. And I'm pretty sure Hagoromo did do that. He had all 9 tail beasts in him, yet he still had 6-pass Sage mode." So he enters 6-pass Sage mode, well, Madara 6-pass Sage mode, and he says, "Let's go." And then they all fly towards it, because they can all fly, because they all have the power of the gods, and, well, yeah. So they see Urashiki destroying outside of the Hokage Tower, and immediately when he's noticed, he dips, but he's not gonna get away. Christian immediately teleports, slams him down, and grabs him by the head and says, "Sorry, buddy, you're not going anywhere," and puts a Chidori to his chest and says, "Goodbye." But it doesn't hit. Urashiki disappears, and Christian feels a sharp pain in his chest. He gets stabbed by Urashiki's, like, red thingy, I don't know, that can steal chakra. He throws it toward, and then he spits out blood and says, "What the hell?" And then he says, and Naruto goes, "No," and then he says, "Oh, 10 tails chakra." So he eats the 10 tails chakra, and now Christian is severely weakened. Like, a lot weakened. Like, he's now weaker than Naruto is. So now we see, he falls to the ground, and yeah. So I need more time to think, but I don't really care. So Naruto runs up with his 6-pass orbs, trying to hit him, and he's almost stabbed, but then it's hit away by Sasuke's sword. And Sasuke jumps up, and then uses body flicker, because Sasuke did learn body flicker. So he teleports around and then knocks him flat. Like, honestly, he knocks him flat, knocking him out. He really just knocks him out. Guys, give me a minute. So, Sasuke gets bodied because he gets knocked out, because when he went from behind for the body flicker slash, he got stabbed too. Then Naruto comes and activates full power 6-pass Sage mode and throws one Seeking Orb at him, sending him flying. Sending Urashiki flying, and then says, "Transform." And while it's hitting Urashiki, transform into an axe and goes right through him. So yeah, pretty strong. Then Naruto gets him away, and then Boruto shows up and he's like, say what? So then he jumps up and body flickers because he learned body flicker too. So then he goes up with a Rasengan. But it misses. And then he turns around and yeets it. And then it disappears and hits Urashiki. Urashiki is now running away to the time space. And immediately Kurama powers up all the Teletubbies, power up Christian, and he goes right back into Madara 6 path. And jumps up and says, "You're not going anywhere." Then he flies super fast and Christian joins him and says, "Naruto, stay here. You too, Sasuke. Boruto, come with me." And Naruto's like, "Why would you take Boruto?" "Because this is a good training lesson for him." He says, okay. "Alright, I trust you with him." He says, "Let's go, Boruto." He gives Boruto a tiny bit of chakra, and but that's a lot of chakra to Boruto. He says, "Get going." So then Boruto ramps up his speed, and they immediately make it to the tower place. And then they immediately head there, and he says, "Don't you do that, Urashiki." And then he makes a Chidori. It says, "Goodbye, Urashiki." And then he goes, "Die!" And then tries to hit him, but then he disappears. And then goes in, and he immediately yeets Boruto in there, and then goes in himself. So when he goes in there, they're back in time, of course, and immediately they see Urashiki, so he sends Urashiki flying with a truth-seeking orb. Now, Urashiki doesn't really stand a chance here, but then a kid Naruto is watching. A kid Christian and a kid Naruto are watching what's going on. And a kid Sasuke. They're like, "What?" So they see him and they're like, "What the heck? Who is that?" And Sasuke says, "That kid kinda looks like you, Naruto." He says, "What?" No, he doesn't. So then Urashiki escapes and they fall and they drop down. He says, "Alright, you ready?" And he says, "Why aren't you saying my name?" He says, "'Cause we're back in time." And he says, "Why are we back in time?" Urashiki used a time portal. He says, "Watch out, I have to go." And then he jumps up. He jumps up like Sasuke does. And Boruto's just left alone. He's like, hello? 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 And then Naruto, Christian, and Sasuke come in and they say, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Boruto." And he gets a telepathic message to his head and says, "Don't say your last name." And then he says, "Oh, alright." And he says, "Who are you two? Who are you guys?" He says, "I am..." And then he goes, "Wait a minute, Dad." And then he goes, "What? Huh?" And then he goes, "You idiot." And he teleports over and says, "Erase from 10 seconds ago." He erases his memory from 10 seconds ago from meeting Boruto. And then he says, "Restart that and don't say Dad." And then he goes, "Alright." So let me see Boruto greeting them and says, "Okay. So you guys ready? So what do you guys have to watch out for a guy named Urashiki." They're like, "Who's Urashiki?" He's a guy going after the 2 Ninetales, and he decided to go from back in time because he decided to go to this Leaf Village because all the other tail beasts were too hard to get. Because he didn't want to expose that they're from the future. So then he goes, "Alright, do you guys mind sparring with me at least once? Because I want to test your guys' skills." Because he wants to see how good Kid Naruto, Kid Christian, and Kid Sasuke were. So first he challenges Kid Sasuke. It does actually really good. It's a tie between the Joagon and the Sharingan. Naruto's next, and Naruto learns how to goes into his immediate QB chakra mode, not KCM. He doesn't go into his one-tail state either, not the QB eyes either. He just powers up with QB chakra and says, "Let's go!" And then he quickly shoots forward and punches him so far, sending everyone flying. He sends Boruto flying with a punch. And then Boruto immediately activates Joagon and throws down a kunai. Throws a kunai past Naruto's face, and Naruto's distracted. He comes behind him, body flickers, and Sasuke's like, what? And then Christian goes, yeah, trouble with that, Sasuke? And he goes, how? How? And he goes, I don't know, I mean, I thought you were the prodigy of the academy. And he goes, what? You heard me? And then he goes, alright then. And then Naruto gets bopped with a body flicker stomach punch. Then it's Christian's turn. He goes one-tailed cloak master, and he says, oh no, he might go out of control. Immediately he feels a gut punch, and then a Chidori through his on his stomach, blasting him up in the air, then jumping up, axling him down, but once he does, Boruto disappears, he sees it, elbows him, throws him down, and goes, you're done. Then goes under him and says, Chidori! But right when he's about to, he's stopped by Christian, like the older one. He catches his hand and says, alright, that's enough. Says, how did he catch it? Nobody usually catches that. And he says, well, kid, times have changed. Literally. He catches it and just says, alright, that was a good sparring match. He says, I want all four of you to come at me, see if you can do it. Let's do the bell test. He goes, how do you know what the bell test is? And he goes, shoot. I still want to test your abilities anyways to see if you're strong enough to face Urashiki. And he says, come at me. And he's in his Jonin outfit and says, come on. He says, a mere Jonin? He says, come on. So then Sasuke comes at him. He goes for that barrage that he does on Kakashi, but immediately when he goes for the third foot, he's blasted away by a blast. And then he says, he puts all kinds of stuff in his hand and says, come on, Sasuke, use your Chidori. He says, alright, Chidori! And then Christian says, Rasengan. And then blasts him up in the air and says, boom, and then goes Wind Gale Palm. And then sends him down. And then he says, come on, Naruto. And Christian, come at me. And you too, Boruto. And they all run him and he says, Amethyst Orb. That's just Ashura's move, just saying. And then he shoots it at them. It's just a big orb with like 3 Rasengans in it. And he sends them all flying. Says, come on guys, you'll never get the bells. And Boruto immediately body flickers behind him, but it's caught, spun around, sent flying. Says, alright, good job, but I want to see you get the bells. Kakashi's watching, he's like, how does that guy know the bell test? And he walks over and says, how do you know the bell test? He says, I have my ways. He's like, oh. He says, would you like to spar, Kakashi? And he goes, sure. He goes, alright guys, you guys did really good, but you didn't even get close to getting them. Says, come on, Kakashi, use your full power. And he says, alright, Sharingan. Christian says, I'm gonna go 1%. And he says, you sure? And he says, yeah. So Kakashi runs up to him, tries to punch him. He's caught, spun around, and double punched, sending him flying. He gets Wind Gale palmed. He says, well, that was boring. What else do you got anything else? And he says, what? How? And he goes, well, that wasn't that hard. And Kakashi starts, and he says, let me show you my true power. Maybe that'll show you a testament of my power. And when Tsunade walks out of the Hokage Tower, she sees 2 figures fighting. She's like, what the? So she runs over and says, what the heck is going on? And then he says, 6 paths, Sage mode. And then he goes into the Madara 6 paths mode. He runs up to Kakashi, punches him in the stomach, then Rasengans him up, slams him down, and then Amethyst orbs him, and defeating Kakashi in 3 blows. So yeah, that's basically it for that fight. Kakashi gets wrecked, and Tsunade goes, what? Kakashi defeated like that? I only think that an Akatsuki member could do that. He thinks only an Akatsuki member could beat Kakashi that bad. And then he goes, so Kakashi's basically knocked out. So Tsunade comes over and heals him, and he says, people would say, oh, Tsunade's not here. Well, this is a changed timeline. Tsunade is here. They do need Tsunade, because in this timeline, the third Hokage did die. So we see Tsunade walking over and says, what the? Says, oh, so you're the Hokage. He says, we're tourists. We're tours. We just want to tour around the Leaf Village. But then we ran into them and asked if they wanted a car. He says, was that 6 Pass Sage mode? And he said, what 6 Pass Sage mode? He says, the one that you have. And he says, shoot. And then he turns off his 6 Pass Sage mode and says, and then he says, Urashiki will be appearing in 2 days. I'm going to be training these young shinobi to be at least strong. Alright, come at me. All of you two. Everyone, I want to give training. So everyone, even you, Kakashi, come at me. So he goes 6 Pass Sage and says, let's go. Kakashi immediately runs to him. He disappears behind him, kicks him super duper far, and says, is that all you guys got? I'll only use taijutsu. So Sasuke tries to go for a Lion's Barrage. It's caught. He spins him around and hits him with his own type of Lion's Barrage, and says, Tiger's Barrage. And then and he's knocked out. So Naruto tries to come in with a big Rasengan, and then he says, all right, massive Rasengan. And they says, you weren't using ninjutsu. Yeah, well, that's. And what if you told Urashiki not to use ninjutsu? He'd still use it. Says, massive. And then it absorbs Naruto's orb and hits him flying. He comes in with the Chidori. He says, alright, Sasuke. Chidori. And then sends him flying. And Kashi's like, how does he know the Chidori? And then he says, Lightning Blade. And then he says, oh, Lightning Blade, huh? He says, 6 Pass Chidori. He puts his hand up and says, Kirin. And then explodes. It explodes them all, knocking them all out. And says, well, that was disappointing. And Tsunade is shocked. She's like, what? A tourist did that much damage? And he says, yep. Hey, what are the tuning exams? And she says, next year. And he asks her, are you guys already tuning? And they all say, no, we're still getting. And he's like, well, this timeline's weird. They're not even tuning yet. Usually they'd be tuning by now. Then he goes, well, when's the next tuning exams? About 3 months from now. And then he says, alright, well, I'll train you guys for 3 months then, and you guys will be too strong for the tuning exams. He says, alright, you guys, come at me. But then Tsunade says, wait a minute. And he goes, what? He says, let me bring all 9 genin so we'll see a really good show. And he says, alright, bring all 9 genin. And all the genin show up. All of the Naruto squad. They're like Kiba, Hinata, Sakura, Tenten, Lee, Neji. And he says, alright, you guys, come at me. And then and they all say, what? And then he says, you heard me, come at me. And then they all come at him, and then he uses body flicker to get up and says, if you guys can't dodge this attack, you'll never be Chunin. You could probably be Jonin if you escape, if you can deflect it. He says, amethyst. Oh! He shoots it at the ground, and almost dodge it. Neji's hit by it. And Naruto's hit by it, but 2 people block it. Sasuke and Krishna, they're like, let's go, Chidori! They almost are getting pushed down. He says, let me put a little bit more energy into it, and says, let's go! Energy, and Kakashi says, I'll join them too! Everyone use your respective strongest jutsu! And then he says, Lightning Blade! And Neji goes 8 trigram 64 palms to add more chakra to it so it will go up. He goes Rock Lee doesn't really have any injury, but he says, he goes, 4th gate, 6th gate, gate of shock, and kicks it up, but it doesn't do a lot. And then Naruto goes to hit it up. Jiraiya shows up, and he goes, Rasengan, hitting it up, and that does a lot. And he goes, no way. Rasengan. So then he's like, and then it goes up, and he says, all of you, maximum power. And he said, Sasuke goes, Sharingan. Neji goes, Byakugan. And so does Hinata. Christian goes, One Tail, Cloak. Naruto goes, QB Chakra. And then they all push it up all the way. He's like, so this is the power. He goes, Mangekyo Sharingan, he says, Kamui. But then he says, nope, that technique won't work. And then he puts 2 hands into the effort now and makes it huge. And he goes, I know I'll make it fall down even faster, he says, with a thunderclap. Be gone. And then it strikes it down, even further, hitting them all. It doesn't knock them out this time, it hurts them severely. And he goes, come on guys, is that all you got? And all of them are are in a crater. And he says, what? How? And then he says, well, if that's all you got, then you guys are too weak. And he says, Tsunade, why don't you join the fray? And she goes, sure, I don't care. So now, Tsunade goes for some punches, they all miss. And then he says, Shadow Clone Jutsu, 7 times. So he makes 7 shadow clones and they all fight him. And he says, alright guys, well, come at my shadow clones. So Kakashi, Tsunade, Christian, and Sasuke immediately disperse theirs. And he creates 10 more shadow clones to go fight them. And the shadow clones are about Shippuden Christian's power level, so yeah. He says, well, it's pretty much over for you. He says, all of everyone, get up here. And they put their amethyst, and they say, amethyst orb! And they all put their amethyst orbs into one giant. And he says, shadow clone! And then one shadow clone comes and he says, use Kirin on it and push it down again. And then he says, and then the shadow clone does Kirin, pushing it down, and then it says, and they're like, no! And he says, I will destroy your village if you do not stop. This attack will wreck your village. And he says, what? So Boruto, enormous Rasengan, eats it up, contending with it, and then Jiraiya goes into perfect Sage mode, Rasenganing it. Naruto forges the QBIs, and says, and goes for a Vermilion Rasengan, blasting it up. Sasuke with a full power Sharingan. Kakashi with a Kamui lightning blade. Tsunade with her strongest punch. Neji with the Byakugan, 8 trigems, 128 palms. And one more person. And then we see the last person of all of them. I'm kidding, there's no one else. So they're all really pushing it up, and he says, well, they're doing one more Kirin. And then he pushes the Kirin down a lot more, and he says, this will destroy your village if you do not try. And he says, shadow clones, push it down too. And they all put their energy into it, pushing it down, and it's humongous. And everyone in Leaf Village is scared to death. And then Naruto goes 1 tail, Christian goes 4 tails. He says, ah, and then he starts shooting his mouth gun up there, pushing up, he's like, oh. And then he goes, alright, I'll disperse it, you guys did good. And he says, so that's the Leaf's forces. Good. He says, come on guys, let's try. Then he stabs through the chest by a little rod. And then it's Urashiki. And they also, and Boruto says, we're doomed! And then Tsunade says, why are we doomed? Because he was the strongest. And this guy is stronger. Well, he's not stronger, but he has too many techniques. He has way too many techniques. He says, maybe, he says, I'll heal him. Heals him, and he's like, alright, back. Kurama, everyone else, let's go. He says, wind style, multiple bomb Rasen Shuriken. And he says, yeah, he learned Rasen Shuriken during the 7-year time. And then he yeets it up and says, and then he says, oh, and it's magnet style, ice style, fire. And he yeets them all at him, bombing him up, and says, everyone, use your respective blasts. And he says, Jackal Jutsu, and then an amethyst orb, and yeets the amethyst orb at him, and Urushiki's pushing it back, and he says, everyone, push it. So Shinade goes for a strongest chakra punch, pushing it forward. She goes for the strongest attacks. Naruto even putting in, and Christian's Kurama says, let's go into our final form. And he says, what? And then he goes, and then he has all tails around him, and it makes him look a lot more like Kurama. He says, it's time. It's just through the blast, punches Urashiki, slams him down, and says, dead Urashiki, and then Chidori's him through the chest. Urashiki spits blood, and then he knees him in the stomach and says, say goodbye. Rasengan. This is my original jutsu that I learned. But then Urashiki Daidaiji says, nice try. And then he throws a kunai above his head and says, Flying Raijin, level 2. Boom! And then explodes his back. And killing Urashiki one more time with a Kirin. Explosion, explosion, explosion. Killing Urashiki, and they get back to their normal timeline. It says, goodbye guys. Good luck for the next Chunin exams. So that's basically it. See you guys tomorrow.